Callie calls herself a GM, and I'm gonna call that instead of a game master, she's game mom. If y'all could spread that for me, Callie is a GM, game mom. Can we do that? I thought HunterMyth was really interesting. Like, for all the tutorial sessions were delightful in different manner. So let's currently talk about Calliope's techniques. I spelled tech. Okay, there you go. Calliope showcased how much knowledge. So she has experience. So I don't know how much experience. I think she mentioned she ran 3 campaigns before, but they can't have been particularly short campaigns. They couldn't have been campaigns that were only like 3 weeks long. These probably lasted months to potential years because Calliope's techniques are tried, true, and tested. Has a lot of different techniques. In this one alone, she showcased a really good implementation of the guide. So the doc himself was a guide NPC, and a guide NPC, interestingly, is not just a character you will find that gives you information. Very specifically, a guide NPC potentially has the same access to information you do, yet it can't be the only way you get information. That's not a guide, that's a plot point. A guide NPC has access to the same stuff you do, but will find it even if you fail. When she does guide NPCs, when she shows off what I call multi-threaded checks. Roll of Darkness uses attributes in a combination of abilities. So say, oh, I'm gonna roll strength and alertness somehow. A good thing that Callie does is what I call multi-threaded checks. So a multi-threaded check would be like, oh, you can roll perception or subterfuge or persuasion. This is powerful because it lets not only does it allow the player to alter how the game interacts with them, it lets them how they interact with the world. I'm really enjoying how Calliope really makes it engaging. I like that she changed the rule set, but I don't actually know as much of World of Darkness rules, so you know that can't be really a thing. So when she does this toolboxing, this shows that she understands that this allows good and bad gameplay. And that is an interesting element, meaning you can be good at tabletop RPGs or bad, because you can see what kind of rolls you want to make. I want to make a deception, but the roll wants me to make an intimidation. I can still roll deception or intimidation, and you can make purposefully bad decisions because it fits the situation better. And that is mostly in the hands of a player. And Gura is the exact... Gura has the exact hands in which I want that power to be in. Gura makes great decisions. Gura was really engaging. I was just so invested with how sassy and how in character she was, even to the pot, being like, excuse me, Scout, are you talking back to me? And says, I reckon I am. I'm like, oh, that's spicy. That is spicy. Like, I don't know how Gura created this whole backstory between her and her pa to have that like bounce off dynamic. Bam, instant. Case in point, saving Doc. So Calliope gave her 2 options. Use your pickaxe or reach your hand in. And Gura, mentally thinking, she wasn't thinking of it as a game. This is what I love about new players. Gura was thinking of it. What can I do in real life? I'm going to look around. I'm surrounded by the farm. Is there a rope nearby? Is there a rope nearby? And no. Okay, what about if I use my belt? this is where she got a little stuck on video game logic, being like, well, it's not an item I could use. It's like, well, do you have it? It's like, yeah, I guess you could use it. You'll knock off your pants, like, ah, whatever, my pants. Then she just takes it off, goes and throws the belt in there. Gura was interacting with it like it was reality. It's fearless improv. That's a really good word. Fearless improv. So I talked about this before with Kiara, and it hasn't come up again since Kiara, but there's 3 major ways in which a player interacts with a tabletop RPG. You deal with both. You deal with actor. You deal with artist. Author. You deal with actor. You deal with author, and you deal with something called the director stance. Okay. Do you want to know the differences, everybody? The actor stance is, I am my character. What would I do? Author. Author would be, I want this to happen for my character, and this is how I'm going to retroactively explain it. Director is, I want this to happen in this world. Kiara was very much powerfully a director. Kiara was very powerfully a director because Kiara was adding details like, oh, I see a hooded man. I see a trench coat man in my memories, in my diary. So Kiara was powerfully this. And you know, everyone has a powerful mix between actor and author. You'll tend to see more meta players be an author because, like, I want this to happen and I'll retroactively explain it. Gura was so powerfully an actor. Gura is like the queen of actors right now because she went in ham, and yeah, she did interact as a director, but that's just how that works. This isn't necessarily a technique of Calliope, but this is more of a technique of the players and how they engage with the story and how Calliope was able to work off that. Calliope was worked off that. Her literally not being able to read, that was hilarious. But yeah, Calliope had several techniques. From using guest characters properly. Yeah, she used guest characters properly. I talked about a couple more. I'd have to really go over the threads. One thing that's really interesting about HunterMyth is Callie is introducing a bunch of complete newbies to the game. I think the only one with experience is Kiara. Kiara has experience. Lithium IO, thanks for the follow. Welcome on. Like, Kiara is like the only one that's experienced, right? Everyone else isn't. And you got to see very interesting ways how they handled the game. Kiara. Callie is a wonderfully gentle GM. Callie, from the beginning, as to what I saw, seems to me to be the kind of GM that is more prep than improv. And you know what? I am both right and terribly wrong. I have to tell you, I am both right and terribly wrong here. Because her prep showed particularly well in Kiara and Yule's stream. The problem with prep really showed almost negatively in Watoto's and Ame. Watoto Ame, like, it showed almost negatively there. Because when you deal with prep, you kind of have a set amount of content, and once you go through it, you're done. That stream with Ame, in a flash, 2 hours, good. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it shows the limitations of prep. But honestly, I think Callie made the right decisions, because when it comes to not have when you've written a story, you can't do more than what you've prepared. If you stretch out a game longer than you think you're ready for, the game is just worse. It just gets worse. I'm not kidding. She saw that the content that she made was ran through, and she went through it. And she didn't make it shorter or longer any more than it had to be. Criticism. Callie asks for a lot of rolls. She really does. She tends to ask for an exorbitant amount of perception checks. And I don't necessarily think that's necessarily a fault with her, but she asks for a lot. And my main observation with that is that the main observation I have with that is that she very likely had a GM that did that. And knowing World of Darkness, that very much well be true. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. So players tend to pick up their GM's habits. Players tend to pick up GM habits. That's just how it is. I am a sadistic GM. I'm a very narrative sadistic GM because that's how my GM when I started was like, you know? That's just how that worked. But yeah, it might have been the tutorialing them because it really got them to do a lot of rolls. And when they did a lot of rolls, they learned how to make rolls happen. They learned, oh, add this, add that. That's my pool. Throw that Callie. Done. Yeah. So it could have been, but also the amount in which she asked, I think it also pushes into the fact it's just a habit she picked up. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just something I picked up. This is the first thread I talked about GNS, Gamism, Narrativism, Simulationism theory, and they use the definition of the director stance. And Kiara was a fantastic director. Constantly adding, hey, what if this is in the scene right now? What if this is in the scene right now? What if that is in the scene right now? She did that amazingly. I'll get back to this later, but Kiara's adventure was heavily something that emphasized an immigrant story. It really emphasized an immigrant story. It's like, hey, I have trouble with money. I have trouble with people treating me poorly. I have trouble with a little bit of racism. And that is something Kiara probably very likely feels. So Callie understood who she was running for. She understood who she was running for. And she gave Kiara that story because she knew that that's how she would interact with it. It's like, you know, this has a lot more connection to you as a person. Not just the character. It's not just the character. But most certainly as a person. Callie knew what Kiara would react to. And that was a really good ability. Callie loves older characters. There was an older couple, an old landlady, an old Callie likes older characters. There was an older couple, an old landlady, an old store owner. In Watoto's, there are old people galore. And in this one, Ma and Pa, etc., etc., etc. Callie seems to have a lot of old people NPCs. And you know what? I've been convinced that there's a lot of power behind old person NPCs. One, they have information. Two, old people tend to hide things from people that they look down on. Well, like the younger thing. 80% of belt buckles elderly. It's 20 people, and I think only 3 young people existed. I like this. Oh, I can't hear the thing you said, you little shit. Oh, do I need to pay you? Just playing up the old person thing. I'm not typically an old person type of player, like a character. Like when I GM, the NPCs I tend to bring out don't tend to be older people. They tend to be best buddies. I'm most likely to bring out a Vic. Like, I am very likely to bring up a Vic character, being like, yeah, I'm a bro. How you doing? Gonna do bro things. Man, you're really hot. Do you wanna hold hands? Sorry, I'm into women. Huh? You know what I mean? So because of all the perception checks that Kiara had to do, what they found that was interesting was very quickly, Kiara knew exactly how much dice she wanted to roll. This happened repeatedly throughout all the sessions to the point where I just stopped making note of it, but Callie did really well in the tutorialism, because Kiara just knew. Boom, done. Oh, I know how much. I need to roll 6 dice. Oh, great, good job. I had initial expectations that Vic would be a character everyone knows, okay? So I legitimately thought that Vic would pop in and be like, hey, I know you. And it happened with Tiara and Yule, but it didn't happen with Watoto and Gura. So that, I don't necessarily know where that was gonna go. I was honestly expecting, and everyone knows this character tangent and like interaction, and I don't know. I thought that was a technique, but I guess it kind of dropped off. Like, it can't really linger because Watoto didn't have a connection to Vic. Oh, it's really tricky. He was identified as a prince twice, which is really interesting because we don't know what kind of prince he is. Is he a vampire prince? Is a gangrel prince? Yada, 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 yada. Between all of the characters, Callie really emphasized one major element, and that's the inciting incident. Callie's inciting incidents are really good. I think it's because it's built into a World of Darkness that you have to have seen something to then be dragged into the World of Darkness. Get it? World of Darkness. Get it? But the inciting, like she really emphasizes what the characters were like in the beginning. She really emphasized the day. She really emphasized, hey, this is your regular day. These are your normal family interactions. This is how you bond together with your family. These are your bonds. These are what you care about. And then the mysterious thing happens and it breaks everything. Completely breaks everything under. And I really loved how Kiara showed 3 days. First day, completely clean. Second day, building tension. Third day, shit goes down. I think Kiara's was a fantastic session because it showed off a lot of Callie's GMing techniques from the get-go. From understanding the rule of threes, from understanding how to deal with director stancers, how she does really good tutorial elements. Callie really emphasized that. Callie doing everything she can to put Kiara in the spotlight. When this was really tricky because I don't believe that Callie was ready for Kiara to bring Vic as hard as she did. Like, let's be honest. Vic wasn't ready for that kind of stuff. Like, Vic was supposed to tell her where it is, and then he was just supposed to book it because he's a coward. But Kiara was really pushing me, like, okay, you're coming with me. Okay, you're opening a door. Okay, you're gonna do all these things. And you could see Callie wasn't sure how to handle that. Yeah, it's where jamming kind of falters a little bit. Callie did everything to put Kiara in the spotlight, trying to get her out, trying to push her to do things, but sometimes it just happens. Just happens. The GM failsafe. So because Callie had emphasized so much about the monstrosity behind these people, like, oh man, the hunger, I'm hungry. And also having Vic in that same location, it's a technique I call the GM failsafe. So if Tiara couldn't get out on her own merit, Vic could have saved her. So one of the monsters could have raged out and attacked everybody else, which was perfectly valid. If I can like zoom forward a little bit, Gura also had a GM failsafe in the existence of the dock. So I could really see a matter in which, let's say the dock and Scout get to the entrance of the well, but Scout kept failing. We could have Scout just die in the entrance, but what I saw was very much a possibility is the dock somehow braving it and pushing her up and her getting out. The GM failsafe. There's always a manner in which there is to escape failure. I talked a little bit about quantum railroading earlier. Where's the quantum part? I talked about quantums. So, yeah, quantum ogre. So, the quantum... Does everyone know what the quantum ogre is? I don't think I talk about it very much. So, the idea of a quantum ogre is that regardless of the decisions that you eventually make, you end up at the same place. So, let me draw this. I talk about this a lot on my own stream, so if you pop in my stream, I will talk about this more. So, a quantum ogre is the idea is you are an adventurer, okay? This is you. No, oh, that's a witch hunter. So let's say you want to go to the mountains, go through the like you're going to a town. You're going to a town, and you could choose to either go through the mountains, or you could go to the beach. I don't know how to draw a beach. And you're headed to the town. There's two pathways. The quantum ogre is an encounter, say a big hulky ogre, that regardless of your decision here or there will appear. So if you go to the mountains and you deal with an ogre, or if you go to the river and you still deal with the ogre, that is a quantum effect. It is the quantum ogre because regardless of the direction you went, you still have to deal with the ogre. And I felt I could really see a quantum. I felt the quantum shop. In Callie's sense, I called it the quantum job because Kiara had three options. She had a pet store. I think she had a maid cafe. I don't remember the last one, but I felt that regardless of the three jobs she chose, she would have met Vic, because I think he was an important character, and she would have met the store owner, the theater, yeah. So that is something I will call the quantum job, because I think regardless of the setting, she would, how you interact with the setting does change because of the setting, but I think the characters and the direction the story was going to go in the same direction. So that was one thing I noticed. It's not a gripe, it's just a thing we do. It's a thing we do. If I went to any other shop, I was expecting an old woman running it for some reason, and I was expecting Vic to show up as a janitor, regardless. That's just how that works. That's the quantum job. Quantum ogre. Callie quantumed. I think she quantumed quite a few times. You could see it again well in Watoto's. Let's move on. Let's move on to Ina. Can I say real quickly? Ina's story was a story of suffering. You thought you'll be, it almost feels like Diesel, thanks for the follow, I'll get the hunt. Ina's was a story of suffering. Ina's was a story where her name almost feels ironic, because she was not all right, I think. Because that's the kind of stuff that sticks with you. A hook man driving his hook into you? Ina's was a story of suffering. I legitimately believe this one. How did Callie handle this? I liked how she changed the rules for this one. It made it a lot more clean. She didn't have to constantly think of the new DCs. DC methods are actually really messy. So Ina's was really interesting. Ina's I was particularly interested because Callie went in with 3 hours of sleep. 3 hours of sleep. So I really wanted to see how you would run a session with that little sleep. Surprisingly, one thing I really enjoy about Callie is you can tell how much she loves tabletop RPGs because as the session went on, she woke up more. She legitimately got better and she woke up as the session ran on. So you know that she's not doing this just because for clicks or likes or people are loving. Well, she's not doing it for clicks and likes. She does this because she loves tabletop RPGs. Even the coffee, you know, it was impressive. I loved how Callie gave a very tailored experience. She made everyone feel really connected. At a university, it's really easy to feel like very individualistic from everybody, but by giving everyone really stupid names, like, you know, just in time, you'll be all right. I don't remember the rest. There was a lot. This is a lot of work. She wouldn't just do it for use. Exactly. And this is kind of like really highlights the amount of passion she has, which I really like. She did whatever she could to make Ina feel really at home, need a friend. Yeah. I had a lot of theories with this one, and admittedly, my biggest weakness with World of Darkness and analyzing this was because I don't have as much World of Darkness information as other people, because, you know what? I'll be honest. I kind of wrote off World of Darkness is just being extremely horny, and I didn't really pay a lot of attention because, hey, I'll be honest, almost every Vampire the Masquerade player, every Mage the Ascension the player, every fucking werewolf player are horny as fuck. The least horny players come from Hunter the Vigil, and I'm really, really glad Calliope knows Hunter the Vigil. I'm extremely glad Calliope does Hunter the Vigil, because it is the most normal, the least horny, the least I want to stick it in something crazy. I'm very, very happy Calliope did Hunter the Vigil. I'm very glad. Callie greatly reduced the number of roles she's asking for. I feel I was really cocky thinking that she read my thread, but whatever. Scoping. This was a GM technique Callie did. So, Kiara emphasized 3 days. That was really important. She did the 3-person timing, and I thought she would do the same thing with Ina. I was wrong. When Calliope wrote her adventure for Ina, she scoped in on a single night, which is a lot more traumatic. Great job, Callie. You emphasized how traumatic it was for Ina. Even harder because all the shit that went down one night. Pretty bad. But understanding the different, like, Kiara was an emphasis in how her environment was really important, which worked really well with her director stancing. But Ina emphasized her relationship with the NPCs. Really good for the trauma and drama that she dealt with. The party, fantastic. Knowing people's names, really good. Dealing with Nita, dealing with everyone. It was a very person-to-person interaction, which allowed her to pad the time. Scoping. Always remember, think of scoping whenever you decide writing an adventure. How many days does this adventure go over? She chose one single night. Callie's an incredibly element, blah blah blah. I want to write Yule Chad fanfiction. I hope he doesn't die. Super cycle Chad. Also, Ima. I feel Ima's middle and last name were Cult and Tist. I feel that. Only could actually get nepotized into work later in the night, blah 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 blah. I was actually really surprised that I liked the idea behind. I don't know what Callie's background is concerning schools and such, but the idea that there was a baby group of hunters was very interesting. So not only will you see with baby groups of hunters, you also saw potentially baby groups of witches. I feel Chad calling Ima a witch was probably hinting at something else in the future. There were a lot of plot threads dropped. Like, I think among all 4, I think Yule's had the most plot threads dropped. The professor, the hook, the cultist, the baby thing. Like, it really emphasized everything. As a quick aside, World of Darkness is heavily emphasized with its strong religious and political commentary. I'm surprised Calliope worked around that. World of Darkness is really heavily politicized and has a lot of religious references. And for me, hololive, I don't think would normally go past that, so she really had to work to convince them, hey, that's not the case. Like, legitimately, it's really politicized. Anyways. Moving on. Why did Ina try running over Vic? I knew it was Vic from here. I really knew it was Vic here. I really knew. And she still ran him over. I'm like, the moment you said janitor, you know? What the party meets? How did you get into this? I had to save my owl from vampires. Yule, I killed a man. Did not kill him because vampires are surprisingly resilient. Even cowards like him. Here I talked about the cohesive NPC, but that didn't really matter because Vic does not know Watoto or Scout. So, I think one thing that was really nice to emphasize in Yule's campaign, well, no, like session, was she does not fudge dice. She does not fudge dice. When Yule kept failing hard, she does not ignore. She does not let anyone ignore. She respects the dice. And that means Yule was very, very likely to die. Anyways, that's Yule's. Closing that, closing that. Watoto's. Watoto's was short. I don't think I had as many points to make when it came to Watoto's. Ame really impressed me because she was the most in character. And she's still really in character, but like compared to the Gura's session, that was something completely different. Callie really leaned in on Ame's chaotic nature. It was very fun. It was very interesting. So you could tell the difference between her and Kiara, because she was just like, hey, you know what we're gonna do? Let's introduce a lot of guns to a conspiracy theorist caveman run by a chaotic VTuber. So, you know, this is where we're at. She knew what Ame wanted, and that was mushroom bomb, fire, gun, and went at it. She just said, go for it. I already expect you to blow something up, because I feel at the end of the session, Callie was ready for the entire factory to blow up. Callie has guts. Callie has guts. She's playing murder hobo chicken with a maniac. I'm not calling Ame a maniac, but also I'm not calling her perfectly sane either. Whew. Callie has so much guts, and I respect that. By the end of the session, it ended quickly because we knew she didn't have the additional content to extend a session past what Watoto would do. And I am impressed with Callie's ability to carry it, because mostly Ame stuck to very short sentences and very short responses, and it was very in character. I loved it. I really did. It showed different interactions between the two, but also Callie did have to step up her game and carry it more than what Watoto was given. That's not on the fault of Ame or anything, but it is just a thing that we GMs do have to handle. It's just a case. A thing I needed to really emphasize with Watoto's, which I was interested in, Watoto has the most emotional stake in the entire group, which I found really fascinating. Think about this really quickly. Kiara has her brother who she doesn't know where he is, potentially in Egypt. Yule has like her classmates, sure, all right. Even Gura has her sister and the doctor with her, but it's not necessarily like they're in danger. But very specifically, Watoto has her family at stake. His family at stake. I think Watoto's a dude. So Watoto's family is missing. You know, Patoto and Matoto, gone. And we don't know what's going on. At the same time, Watoto also ended up making a freaking deal with the worm. Watoto made a deal with the worm, and they made a villainous NPC favor. That was really heavy. Because, fun fact, the worm is a major bad situation, because the worm is an agent of chaos and destruction and kind of wants like everyone dead or something like that. So the fact that the most chaotic player and the most chaotic character is under a favor by the worm, an agent of entropy and evil, is kind of dope. It's really, really wild. So with the worm, this kind of opens up to worm is one of the 3 celestials level tier of bad. The great worm is like of 3 god levels. It is that level of bad. So being an agent of this thing will potentially put Watoto against the party. If that favor comes out at the right time, Watoto against the party instantly. Especially if her family is then put as a reward or bait if Ame helps them. So if Watoto 1 gets called in by contract's already on them. 2, if Watoto's big, hey, we have your family and we'll help. Watoto is actually just screwed. Watoto is in a corner more than anybody else to betray the party. Inter-party conflict will be a major element. I'm really, really excited to see Watoto and Scout on opposite sides. That's really stark, but hey, we'll see. I did very much emphasize I'm not angry. I'm not like upset or being really critical of Watoto having a shorter session, like a short campaign, but it's just a thing that happens. Like, you can't push it more than it is. Watoto might be the most tragic character. It might... Scout has their family at stake, but the family kind of left. And they were kind of responsible for the issues. Watoto's story, while short, was so much more tragic, it increased my investment into the story. Greatly so. Last up, Gura. I don't want to say this. I don't want to say someone is the best. I don't think that's fair to everybody. But I don't want to undercut how amazing Gura's session was. It is by far the best one. I hate calling it that, but it is. Because Gura's level of in-character investment and how she interacted with everything was up and above, so high quality. It was just that astounding. Like, no one expected like a complete newbie. I really like Callie and Gura's sibling energy. They have the highest compatibility between all the intro pairs. Like, it's different. I'm not gonna say necessarily more chemistry than everybody else, but I do think that their chemistry was really strong. One, that they feel they know Southern stuff together. 2, that sibling energy, they really bounce off. 3, the storyteller / like role-playing element. Like, they are both entertainers. They are both powerful entertainers. And seeing them interact with each other was astounding. I don't really have the highest opinion of one-on-one RPGs, but Gura was shook a lot of my preconceptions about tabletop RPGs. And once again, I have been doing this for 14 plus years. Like, there was a strong possibility Gura was going to be completely like was going to beef it this entire session. Like, everyone was expecting her to be bad at math or like to make a bad mistake or something happen, but Gura broke everyone's expectations by probably being like far and above the best session. Gura played on the highest difficulty, one eye, southern, illiterate, hard of hearing. Still killed it. Gura was handling the director stance, but she was also strongly an actor. She cared a lot about what her character would do, not what she wanted to get done. Gura they have a kind of imbalanced yet balanced relationship. Gura looks up to Callie while Callie's very patient with Gura. Like, the way early on, while Callie was just like, okay, so how much is this? 2. How much is this? 2. And what does that make? 4. She was being a little bit slower. I just thought it was, like, amazing. Gura is a natural and unnatural entertainer. Everything she touches turns to gold. They're the kind of player that you want as a GM. They're ready to fill the space in for the moment they can. They remembered almost every NPC they interacted with, and they cared. because Callie set off as, hey, this is your hometown. You know everyone. I have nothing but praise for this entire session. This was by far my favorite. She gave player options what they like to roll. I mentioned this earlier, how the characters really like to emphasize the different elements of a character. Be like, okay, this is manipulation and subterfuge, etc., etc. Just perception, finance, investigation. You know, how the toolboxy nature of it allowed Callie to say you could roll up to like 3 different things for like this one session. It could be expression, it could be empathy, it could be perception. You know what I mean? Compared to all the other sessions where I felt comfortable like walking away, getting water, going to the washroom, I felt I could not miss a single moment of this entire collab. I could not miss a single moment because I feel I would miss something so big. Oh, diversified gameplay. I didn't get to talk about this one. So diversified gameplay is another technique Callie brought in. Does anyone know what diversified gameplay is? You don't really get to see it unless you have multiple characters, but Callie did show what diversified gameplay was. So, diversified. So, imagine you have one character, right? You have one character. And you have 2 PCs. You have the tough guy. The tough guy player character. And you have the nerd. Diversified gameplay is the idea that these 2 characters will look at this character and interact with the world differently. Okay? So the tough guy, so the nerd will look at this regular guy being like, oh, he looks really tough. He looks... Thanks for the follow, French Fort. Thanks for the follow. So the nerd will look at this guy being like, oh man, this guy actually looks like... He makes you nervous. Makes you nervous because he looks like he can beat you up, yada yada. It's actually kind of nerve-wracking. The tough guy would be like, this guy's scrawny. You've seen tougher guys at the you've seen way tougher guys at the gym. You've fought the mafia before. This guy, he's a wimp. And this is the basis of diversified gameplay. How a character views anything changes based on the character. It's not as clear, but it really worked when the doctor was explaining what was happening in the tunnel. So, because Callie knows that that Scout is hard of hearing. Scout is hard of hearing. She did not give Scout a perception roll. Because it was based on hearing. She was like, do you hear that? And Scout was like, no, what? Because she's hard of hearing. And the doctor explained, the walls are moving. The walls are moving. And that is an emphasis on diversified gameplay. It's more shown when you have multiple characters, but because Calliope was emphatic on Gura not getting that perception check, it did show elements of that. I'm wondering if she'll still do this in a group session, and I am looking out for diversified gameplay when the group session starts. But as is, I've got high hopes that she knows this technique. It's not a technique that you necessarily memorize, it's just a technique that you like get a sense of. My brain stopped. I usually am really critical and analytical of these situations, and I always look for like techniques, but here I couldn't help but just sit there and feel the moment. I was invested more than I've ever been in any stream game, more than Critical Role, more than any stream game I've ever dealt with. Final thoughts. Everyone, Calliope is a good GM. It feels really basic to say this. Calliope is a good GM. She knows what she's doing. HunterMyth was more engaging than I expected anything. Really. It was impressive, and I'm very excited to see where this goes moving forward. She has shown and risen the bar. But here's the problem. The one thing that we're going to need to look out for is that she's done really well one-on-one. But one-on-one doesn't necessarily translate to group. I'm not saying that she's going to be bad in the group, but managing players is going to be difficult. Because one, Gura was so good. Gura is the type to classify into two things. One, she'll either keep getting the spotlight, or because she doesn't want to be in the spotlight, she'll stay quiet and let everyone else do things. So balancing the spotlight and not just balancing player expectations is gonna be really tricky. Yeah, Larilyn, you said that. So we're going to be dealing with, I think it's not so hard to be good when it comes to one-on-one. You do have to carry a lot, and that's where prep goes really well. Prep is really good on one-on-one. High prep, one-on-one. Really good, perfect for it. It's not as good when you have groups. If you have major groups, you're gonna have to rely on a lot of improv. So group play requires improv. And we'll have to see how strong Callie's improv is. And that's where we need to keep an eye on it. I have high hopes. I have high expectations. Callie has raised the bar. Now the question is, if the bar is so high, how long can you stand? How long can you hang from a jungle gym? You know what I mean? I think she can, but we'll see. If you like these thoughts, I also stream on Twitch. Come by down on Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, typically about 2 p.m. PST.